Ladies and gentlemen, most people live in emotional debt. They borrow their happiness from others, relying on compliments, attention, and approval to feel good. The problem is, when those things disappear, so does their self-worth. Imagine living in a way where no one's opinion could shake you, where your peace, your joy, your confidence remained untouched, no matter who stayed, who left, or who ignored you. This is not about isolation, it's about liberation. If you watch this till the end, you'll understand the simple, timeless truth. The moment you stop depending on anyone for your happiness, you stop being controlled by the world, and you finally start living. The illusion of external validation is one of the most subtle yet powerful traps we fall into as human beings. From childhood, we are taught, sometimes explicitly, sometimes silently, that our worth is measured by the reactions we get from others. A smile from a parent when we do something right, applause from a teacher when we perform well, approval from peers when we fit in with their expectations. These early moments create a mental blueprint. If others are pleased with me, then I am good. If they are not, then I am lacking. We grow into adulthood still carrying this silent equation, seeking to feel valuable only when someone else confirms it. But there is a hidden cost to living this way. When your sense of worth is built on the shifting sands of other people's opinions, you become a prisoner of their moods, their biases, their fleeting attention. One day, someone may tell you that you're wonderful, and your heart soars. The next day, they may ignore you, criticize you, or simply be too distracted to notice you. And suddenly, your inner world collapses. Your emotional stability becomes a puppet, dancing to the strings of others' reactions. You are no longer living for your own truth. You are living for applause. The illusion here is subtle. You believe that approval is a sign of connection, that praise means you are on the right path. But in truth, much of the validation we receive is conditional. People tend to reward what aligns with their preferences, not necessarily what is authentic to your soul. Sometimes the very thing that makes you real and alive will provoke disapproval, not applause. If you live only for external validation, you will be forced to abandon parts of yourself just to keep others happy. And in doing so, you lose the very essence of who you are. Consider how exhausting it is to keep chasing this moving target. No one person can provide you with a consistent stream of validation. Even those who love you deeply cannot meet that demand every moment of every day. They have their own lives, their own battles, their own storms. Depending on them for your emotional fuel is like trying to warm yourself by standing close to a flickering candle. It gives light for a while, but it's not a lasting fire. The tragedy is that while we are busy chasing praise, we often ignore the most important form of validation, the one that comes from within. We forget that the ability to feel good about ourselves is not something to be given. It is something to be claimed. Real self-worth is not handed down to you like a gift. It is built brick by brick through self-awareness, self-respect, and alignment with your own values. External validation feels intoxicating because it gives a quick burst of pleasure. It is the emotional equivalent of sugar. Sweet in the moment, addictive in nature, and ultimately unsatisfying if it's your only source of nourishment. Without learning to generate validation internally, you will always be hungry for another fix of approval, another like, another compliment, another reassurance. This dependency keeps you in a perpetual state of emotional malnutrition. Breaking free from this illusion doesn't mean rejecting the kindness or appreciation of others. We are social beings, and healthy acknowledgement is a beautiful part of human connection. But the key is to shift your perspective so that external validation becomes a bonus, not the foundation. The difference is profound. When praise is a bonus, you can enjoy it without needing it to survive. When it is the foundation, your entire self-image collapses without it. To see the illusion clearly, you must observe how it operates in your own life. Notice the way your mood changes when someone praises you versus when someone criticizes you. Ask yourself, who am I without their opinion? If no one noticed my work, my looks, my choices, would I still feel whole? These questions are uncomfortable because they expose the depth of our dependence. But discomfort is the first sign that we are beginning to awaken. The freedom on the other side of this awakening is unlike anything external approval can give you. It is the quiet, steady knowing that you are enough, not because the world says so, but because you say so. It is the strength to continue walking your path, even when no one claps for you. It is the peace of mind that comes when you realize that people's opinions are just reflections of their own perspectives, not absolute truths about who you are. When you free yourself from the illusion of external validation, you reclaim your power. You stop living like an actor on a stage, performing for the crowd, and start living like the author of your own story. The applause may come and go, but your sense of worth remains steady and unshaken. And in that steadiness, you will find a deeper joy than any compliment could ever give you, the joy of being whole within yourself. The source of real contentment does not exist in the outer world. It is rooted in the quiet chambers of your own being. Yet for most of our lives, we are trained to look everywhere except within. We look for happiness in achievements, in possessions, in relationships, in titles, in the approval of strangers. We imagine that if we can just arrange the pieces of life perfectly, if we can be liked by the right people, have the right partner, earn enough money, live in the right home, then finally we will feel complete. But this belief is like chasing the horizon. No matter how far you walk, it keeps moving away from you. Real contentment has a different nature. It is not dependent on events, circumstances, or other people's behavior. It is the quiet satisfaction that arises when you are in harmony with yourself, when you are no longer at war with your own thoughts, no longer running from your own emotions, no longer trying to be someone you are not. This inner peace is not flashy. It doesn't demand attention. It simply exists like a calm lake, reflecting the sky without trying to control it. The reason so many people never discover this inner source is that they confuse pleasure with contentment. Pleasure is often loud and temporary. It comes from stimulation, good food, exciting experiences, praise, or romantic attention. It is beautiful in its place, but it is not stable. The moment the stimulus fades, the pleasure evaporates. Contentment, however, is stable because it does not need constant feeding. It is born from acceptance of yourself, acceptance of life's imperfection, acceptance of the fact that change is constant and that control is limited. When you depend on the outer world for your sense of peace, you are building your house on unstable ground. The world is unpredictable. People change, circumstances shift, fortunes rise and fall. If your happiness depends on these shifting conditions, then it will forever be as unstable as the conditions themselves. But when your contentment comes from an inner foundation, your own values, your own self-respect, your own ability to be at ease in solitude, then it is like building on solid rock. The storms may come, but your house will not crumble. True contentment also arises when you stop comparing your life to someone else's. Comparison is a thief of peace because it convinces you that happiness is somewhere else, in someone else's hands. But the truth is, no matter how perfect another person's life appears, they too have their private struggles, doubts, and insecurities. When you realize that the perfect life you are chasing does not actually exist, you free yourself to embrace the life you already have. This shift in perspective is powerful. It turns ordinary moments into blessings, and it allows you to feel gratitude even without grand achievements. Important aspect of real contentment is living in alignment with your truth. Many people feel restless and unhappy, not because they lack possessions or relationships, but because they are living in ways that betray their own hearts. They take jobs they despise, say yes when they mean no, surround themselves with people who drain them, all to maintain a certain image, or to avoid disappointing others. But every time you betray your inner voice, a part of your peace erodes. Contentment grows when your actions, words, and decisions reflect who you truly are, not who you think others want you to be. There is also a profound relationship between contentment and self-sufficiency. This is not the cold independence of refusing all help, but rather the warm strength of knowing that you are capable of meeting your own emotional needs. When you know how to soothe your own mind, how to uplift your own spirit, how to comfort yourself in times of pain, you stop being desperate for others to fill that role. Then, relationships become a choice, not a dependency. You can love freely without clinging, because your peace does not hang in the balance of their presence. One of the greatest misunderstandings about contentment is that it means settling for less or losing ambition. In truth, contentment and ambition can coexist beautifully. You can strive for more without being dissatisfied with the present moment. In fact, when you operate from a place of contentment, your ambitions are cleaner. They are driven by curiosity and growth rather than fear or emptiness. You no longer chase achievements to prove your worth. You pursue them as an expression of your worth. To find this source of real contentment, you must slow down enough to notice it. It does not shout, it whispers. It is present when you sit quietly with yourself without reaching for a distraction. It is felt when you breathe deeply and realize that in this moment, nothing is missing. It is there when you stop replaying the past or rushing into the future and simply allow yourself to be here now. This kind of presence is not an exotic skill. It is your natural state, obscured only by the noise of endless wanting. The moment you touch that quiet center within you, something changes. You no longer feel the same urgency to impress, to compete, to seek constant reassurance. You understand that the joy you were chasing was never outside, it was waiting inside you all along. And when you operate from that realization, you carry your peace with you wherever you go, untouched by the changing winds of the world. Breaking the cycle of neediness begins with a courageous look at how it silently shapes our lives. Neediness is not always loud or obvious. Sometimes it hides beneath the surface in the form of constant checking for replies, overthinking someone's silence, tailoring your personality to please others, or feeling unsettled when you're not receiving attention. It is the silent pull that tells you, I can't feel good unless someone is noticing me, approving of me, or reassuring me. At first glance, it may seem harmless. After all, everyone enjoys appreciation. But when your emotional stability depends on it, you hand over control of your inner world to forces you cannot command. The first step to breaking this cycle is to see it for what it is, a habit formed over years of conditioning. Somewhere along the way, you learn that love, safety, or self-worth must be earned through performance, compliance, or constant connection. This lesson may have been reinforced by early relationships, cultural pressures, or personal insecurities. The result is a dependency on external feedback to confirm that you are enough. Until you notice this pattern, it operates like an invisible program, dictating your thoughts, emotions, and choices without your awareness. Once you've recognized it, the next step is to challenge the beliefs that keep it alive. Neediness thrives on the illusion that other people hold the keys to your happiness. You might think, if they like me, I'm valuable. If they leave, I'm worthless. This belief is not just untrue, it's exhausting. People's opinions are fluid. They change with mood, circumstance, and even misunderstanding. Basing your worth on such a shifting standard is like trying to stand upright in a boat during a storm. True stability comes when you take back the keys and realize that your value was never in their hands. It has always been in yours. Breaking the cycle also means learning to tolerate emotional discomfort without rushing to fill it. When someone doesn't reply right away, your mind may invent reasons, stories, and worst-case scenarios. This is the moment where you have a choice. Either spiral into anxious behavior, checking your phone, sending another message, distracting yourself with validation from someone else, or sit with the discomfort and let it pass. The ability to be with your own unease without demanding that someone else soothe it is one of the greatest acts of emotional maturity you can practice. It is equally important to reclaim the time and energy that neediness drains from you. Think of how many hours are spent overanalyzing interactions, chasing approval, or adjusting yourself to fit someone's expectations. This is energy that could be invested in your own growth, your passions, your well-being. By redirecting that energy inward, you begin to strengthen the foundation of self-worth that neediness erodes. When your life is full of things that nourish and excite you, you stop needing others to fill the emptiness. You become a magnet for connection rather than a beggar for it. Key part of breaking free is setting boundaries, not just with others, but with yourself. You must be willing to say, I will not abandon my own needs and values just to be liked. I will not compromise my peace to keep someone's attention. I will not silence my truth to avoid losing approval. These self-boundaries act as guardrails, keeping you from sliding back into behaviors that reinforce dependence. And while it may feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you've spent years bending to others, it gradually builds a deep sense of self-respect. It's also worth noting that breaking this cycle doesn't mean closing yourself off from love or connection. Healthy independence is not emotional isolation. It is emotional strength. It means you can enjoy closeness without losing yourself, you can give without resentment, and you can receive without neediness. Relationships become richer because they are built on choice, not desperation. When you no longer need someone to complete you, you can truly appreciate them for who they are, not for what they give you emotionally. One of the most transformative practices for dissolving neediness is to regularly give yourself the very things you crave from others: reassurance, kindness, encouragement, acceptance. If you long for someone to tell you that you are doing well, say it to yourself and mean it. If you crave someone's acknowledgement of your efforts, pause and genuinely appreciate yourself for them. This is not empty self-talk. It is a deliberate act of reparenting your own mind, teaching it to find safety and joy without outsourcing them. Patience is essential. The cycle of neediness did not appear overnight, and it will not disappear instantly. There will be moments when old habits pull you back, when you catch yourself seeking attention in subtle ways or feeling low because someone is distant. Instead of judging yourself, use these moments as reminders. Here is the old pattern again. I see it, and I choose differently now. Each time you choose self-reliance over dependence, you weaken the hold of the cycle. Something remarkable happens. The silence that once made you anxious begins to feel peaceful. The lack of response that once felt like rejection becomes an opportunity for self-reflection. The absence of constant validation no longer feels like emptiness, it feels like freedom. And in that freedom, you realize you were never truly needy. You were simply disconnected from the deepest source of strength you already possessed, the ability to feel whole on your own. The power of self-approval is one of the most liberating forces a person can experience, yet it is also one of the most overlooked. We spend so much of our lives waiting for someone else to give us permission to feel proud, to feel worthy, to feel like we matter. We hold our breath until someone nods in our direction, claps for our effort, or acknowledges our progress. But living this way is like waiting for the sun to rise. Only when someone else tells you it's allowed, it leaves your happiness at the mercy of external conditions. Self-approval changes everything, because it removes the middleman between you and your own sense of worth. Self-approval is not arrogance, and it is not about convincing yourself you are flawless. It is about recognizing your own humanity, valuing your own effort, and trusting your own judgment without needing every choice to be confirmed by others. It is the quiet confidence of knowing, I am allowed to feel good about myself without a committee vote. This is not an easy shift to make because for most of us, the habit of seeking approval is deeply ingrained. From childhood, we are graded, evaluated, measured, and rewarded based on how well we meet someone else's standard. Without realizing it, we start to measure our own value by those same external markers. The danger in this is that external approval is never consistent. People may praise you today and criticize you tomorrow. They may misunderstand your actions, fail to notice your effort, or simply be too caught up in their own world to acknowledge you. If your sense of worth is tethered to their recognition, you will find yourself riding an emotional roller coaster that never stops. But when you learn to approve of yourself, you step off that ride entirely. You still hear feedback, but it no longer dictates your self-image. Self-approval begins with an honest acknowledgement of your own progress, however small. It means looking at yourself and saying, I see the work I'm doing. I see how far I've come. I am proud of the steps I've taken. Too often we dismiss our own achievements because they don't look dramatic enough or because they haven't been noticed by the outside world. But every act of integrity, every moment of discipline, every time you choose growth over comfort, you are building the foundation for a self-respect that does not crumble when applause is absent. Another important aspect of self-approval is trusting your own intuition. Many people abandon their instincts because they have been told, directly or indirectly, that someone else knows better. They fear making mistakes, so they defer every decision to others. The problem is that this constant outsourcing of judgment leaves you disconnected from your own inner compass. Self-approval reconnects you to that compass. It says, I trust myself to make the best decision I can with the knowledge I have. And if it turns out imperfect, I trust myself to learn from it without condemning myself. This trust builds resilience because you no longer fear the collapse of your self-worth when things go wrong. Self-approval also dismantles the exhausting need to compare yourself with others. When you measure your worth by someone else's path, you will always find a reason to feel less than. Someone will always have more, achieve faster, or receive more attention. But when you approve of yourself, your focus shifts from competition to authenticity. You no longer ask, am I better than them? You ask, am I being true to myself? And if the answer is yes, that is enough. There will be moments when the voice of self-doubt rises and tries to drown out self-approval. You will be tempted to revert to old patterns of fishing for compliments or waiting for permission to feel proud. In those moments, self-approval becomes an active choice, not a passive feeling. You deliberately remind yourself, my worth is not on trial here. I do not need anyone to certify my value. This is a discipline, and like any discipline, it strengthens with practice. An often overlooked benefit of self-approval is how it transforms relationships. When you no longer seek constant validation, you free others from the burden of being your emotional life support system. You show up in relationships as a whole person, able to give without hidden expectations and to receive without neediness. Paradoxically, this makes you more magnetic because people are naturally drawn to those who carry their own sense of worth. One of the simplest ways to strengthen self-approval is to develop a daily habit of acknowledgement. Each day, name one thing, just one, that you respect about yourself. It could be the way you handled a challenge, the discipline you showed in sticking to a goal, or even the kindness you extended to yourself when you made a mistake. This daily recognition rewires the mind to look inward for affirmation, instead of constantly scanning the outside world for signs of acceptance. You will find that self-approval does not make you dismissive of other people's opinions. It simply prevents you from being ruled by them. Praise becomes a pleasant bonus, not a lifeline. Criticism becomes feedback to consider, not a verdict on your worth. And the absence of acknowledgement from others no longer feels like an absence of value, because you are already standing on the unshakable ground of your own recognition. When you live from a place of self-approval, you carry an unspoken power. You no longer wait for permission to feel joy, pride, or peace. You grant it to yourself freely and without condition. And in doing so, you unlock a kind of freedom that external validation could never give you. The freedom to be yourself fully, without apology, and without fear of losing the world's applause. Creating inner stability is the art of becoming an anchor in a world of constant motion. Life, by its very nature, is unpredictable. People change, circumstances shift, plans fall apart, and even the most secure situations can crumble without warning. If your emotional state rises and falls with every wave, you will spend your life exhausted, trying to steady yourself in waters you cannot control. Inner stability is what allows you to remain grounded even when everything around you feels uncertain. It is the strength of being able to meet life as it is without being swept away by every passing current. The first truth about inner stability is that it cannot be borrowed from someone else. Many people unknowingly rely on others to regulate their emotions. They feel steady only when a partner reassures them, a friend comforts them, or someone important validates their feelings. But this kind of stability is fragile because the moment that source of reassurance is absent, the ground beneath them feels like it's gone. True stability must come from within because only then is it available to you at all times, regardless of who is around or what is happening. Inner stability begins with self-awareness. You cannot control your emotions if you are not aware of them. Many people are so reactive that they move from one emotional state to another without even noticing what triggered them. The smallest criticism, the slightest delay, the most minor disagreement can send them into anxiety or frustration. Awareness gives you the space to pause before reacting. It allows you to step back and say, I am feeling anger or I am feeling fear, instead of letting those emotions dictate your actions in an instant. This pause is the doorway to stability. Once awareness is in place, the next step is self-regulation. The ability to calm yourself, encourage yourself, and ground yourself without waiting for external help. This could be as simple as taking deep, deliberate breaths when you feel overwhelmed, journaling to untangle racing thoughts, or engaging in an activity that centers you, like walking in nature or practicing stillness. These practices are like strengthening the muscles of your emotional core. The stronger they become, the less likely you are to be thrown off balance by life's inevitable turbulence. Another aspect of inner stability is learning to separate what you can control from what you cannot. Much of our emotional chaos comes from trying to manage things outside our influence, other people's opinions, the choices they make, the timing of events, the outcomes of situations. When you waste energy trying to control the uncontrollable, you invite frustration and instability. Stability comes from focusing on what is truly within your power, your thoughts, your actions, your attitude, your response. This shift in focus frees you from the helplessness that comes from chasing control over things that were never yours to command. Inner stability also requires a strong sense of self-definition. If you do not know who you are, your values, your priorities, your boundaries, then you will be easily swayed by the pressures and opinions of others. One person's approval will lift you, another's criticism will crush you, and you will keep adjusting yourself in an endless attempt to please. But when you are clear on who you are and what matters to you, you stand like a tree with deep roots. The winds may shake your branches, but they cannot uproot you. An often overlooked part of building stability is accepting discomfort as part of life. Many people seek stability by trying to eliminate all uncertainty, risk, and pain. But life will never cooperate with such a plan. Instead, stability comes from learning to remain centered in the presence of discomfort. This is the difference between someone who panics at every storm and someone who can weather it calmly. You don't need to like discomfort to be stable in it. You simply need to trust your ability to move through it without losing yourself. Routines and grounding habits also play a role in stability. Simple, consistent actions, waking up at the same time, practicing mindfulness, caring for your body, send a signal to your mind that you are in control of your own space and rhythm. These small anchors create a sense of order that supports emotional steadiness. They do not prevent life's disruptions, but they give you a reliable foundation to return to when disruptions occur. Perhaps the most empowering truth about inner stability is that it changes how you experience the world. Without it, you live in constant reaction, pulled in every direction by external forces. With it, you become the calm in the storm. It is loving deeply without clinging, engaging fully without demanding permanence, and appreciating the beauty of the moment without needing it to last forever. Much of human suffering comes from attachment in the wrong form. Not the natural bond we feel for what we care about, but the desperate grasping to hold things exactly as they are, to make them stay, to keep them from changing. We try to freeze people in place, preserve situations like photographs, and control the unfolding of events to match our expectations. But life moves. People evolve, circumstances shift, and nothing remains static for long. When our happiness depends on something staying the same, change feels like a threat, and we begin living in fear of loss. Detachment dissolves that fear by teaching us to embrace change as part of life's natural rhythm. To detach is to release the illusion of ownership over things that were never truly ours to control. This does not mean you stop caring. In fact, it often allows you to care more purely because your care is no longer tangled with fear and demand. The eye in the hurricane. People will notice that you do not flinch under pressure, that you do not crumble at the first sign of difficulty. This is not because life is easier for you, but because you have cultivated a strength that does not depend on ease. Inner stability is not about being unshakable in the sense of never feeling emotion. It is about being deeply human, feeling joy, sadness, fear, excitement, but never losing your center. It is the quiet knowing that no matter what comes, you can return to yourself. And when you have this, you stop fearing change, you stop clinging to what you cannot hold, and you begin to live with a freedom that only those with deep roots can truly understand. Freedom through detachment is not about coldness or indifference, though many people misunderstand it that way. It is not a withdrawal from life, nor is it the rejection of love, relationships, or meaningful connections. True detachment is the ability to be fully present with people, experiences, and outcomes without allowing your sense of peace or worth to be chained to them. When you are attached in a possessive way, love becomes conditional. I will feel secure as long as you behave the way I want, as long as you stay close, as long as you meet my needs exactly. This is not freedom for you, and it is not freedom for them. But when you detach, love transforms into something spacious, an offering without a chain attached. Detachment also applies to outcomes. We often decide that our peace will only be available to us if events unfold according to our plan. We think, I will feel happy when I get the promotion, when I receive that message, when this specific thing works out. The problem is, life rarely follows our script, and when it doesn't, we collapse. Detachment invites us to act with full commitment while letting go of the outcome. It is the mindset of saying, I will give my best and I will be at peace with whatever comes because my peace is not for sale. This frees you from the constant anxiety of needing life to bend to your will in order to be okay. There is also a subtle but powerful shift that happens when you practice detachment. You begin to realize that you are already whole. Much of our unhealthy attachment to people and outcomes comes from a hidden belief that something outside us will complete us. We cling because we believe we are incomplete without that person, that status, that achievement. But when you recognize your inherent wholeness, your relationships and pursuits become expressions of your fullness, not attempts to fill a void. You no longer need someone or something to make you enough, and this naturally loosens the grip of attachment. Detachment, however, is not a one-time decision. It is a daily practice. You might feel free one day and then catch yourself clinging the next. This is natural. The goal is not perfection, but awareness. When you notice yourself becoming overly dependent on a person's presence or a specific outcome, you gently remind yourself, I can care without clinging. I can appreciate without owning. I can participate without controlling. Another important element is trusting the flow of life. Detachment is difficult if you secretly believe that life is working against you. In that state of mind, letting go feels like abandoning control and opening yourself to chaos. But when you begin to see that change often carries you toward new growth, that endings often make way for beginnings. Detachment becomes easier. You trust that even if something or someone leaves, you remain whole, and life still has beauty to offer. Practicing detachment can also improve the quality of your relationships. When you stop clinging, you stop trying to mold people into your ideal version of them. You let them be who they are, and you allow the relationship to grow in a more natural, authentic way. Paradoxically, this freedom often strengthens bonds, because people feel safer when they know they are not being held in a cage of someone else's expectations. The peace that comes from detachment is profound. You are no longer held hostage by fear of loss or disappointment. You become resilient, not because nothing affects you, but because you no longer crumble when things change. You begin to enjoy moments for what they are, not for how long they last. You experience love in its purest form, love without possession, without bargaining, without the desperate need to control the future. Freedom through detachment is not about walking away from life. It is about walking through life with open hands instead of clenched fists. It is about holding everything gently, knowing it may pass, and being grateful for it while it's here. It is about discovering that the deepest security comes not from holding on, but from knowing you can let go and still be whole. When you live this way, you stop fearing the inevitable tides of change, because you understand that nothing real, nothing essential, can ever truly be taken from you. The practice of inner nourishment is the deliberate act of feeding your mind, body, and spirit from within. So you are not constantly waiting for the world to feed you. It is not something that happens by accident. It is cultivated, much like tending to a garden. If you neglect it, weeds of insecurity, fatigue, and restlessness grow quickly. But when you nourish yourself daily, you create a steady supply of energy, peace, and joy that does not depend on whether someone compliments you, calls you, or approves of you. Most people take care of themselves only when life forces them to, when exhaustion turns into burnout, when stress leads to illness, when loneliness becomes unbearable. But inner nourishment works best when it is consistent, not just when you are in crisis. It is the habit of pouring into yourself before you run dry. This means creating small, regular rituals that make you feel whole and alive, even if no one else is around to witness it. Inner nourishment starts with what you allow into your mind. Just as you would not eat spoiled food, you cannot expect your inner world to thrive if you are feeding it a steady diet of negativity, comparison, and distraction. The books you read, the conversations you have, the media you consume, all of it leaves an imprint. You must become intentional about choosing input that strengthens you. This could mean reading ideas that expand your perspective, listening to voices that inspire rather than drain you, or simply creating moments of silence where your mind can rest from constant stimulation. It also involves the way you speak to yourself. Many people starve themselves of nourishment because their inner voice is harsh, critical, and unkind. You cannot feel strong and whole if your thoughts are constantly tearing you down. Inner nourishment means learning to replace the voice of the inner critic with the voice of an inner ally, one that encourages, reassures, and reminds you of your worth. This does not mean ignoring your flaws, but speaking to yourself with the same patience and compassion you would offer to someone you love. Your body, too, needs to be part of this nourishment. This is not about appearance, but about vitality. When your body is cared for through rest, movement, and healthy fuel, it becomes a steady foundation for your emotional and mental life. Many people underestimate how much their mood and resilience are tied to physical well-being. You cannot expect yourself to be calm, focused, and happy if you are constantly running on caffeine, neglecting sleep, and treating your body as an afterthought. Caring for your body is not vanity. It is the practical base of self-reliance. Spiritual nourishment in whatever form it takes for you is another key element. This could mean meditation, prayer, reflection, or simply spending time in nature. It is the practice of connecting to something larger than yourself, whether that's the stillness within, the natural world, or a sense of the divine. When you take time for this connection, you tap into a source of peace that is deeper than the day-to-day ups and downs. You remember that you are part of something vast, and this perspective makes your worries feel smaller and more manageable. An important truth about inner nourishment is that it requires boundaries. You cannot fill yourself if you are constantly drained by obligations, toxic relationships, or overcommitment. Sometimes nourishment means saying no without guilt. It means protecting your energy as if it were something precious, because it is. Boundaries are not walls to keep life out. They are filters that allow in what is good for you and keep out what harms you. Another way to nourish yourself is through creativity and play. Adults often forget that joy is not just for children, but a vital part of a balanced life. Doing something creative, whether it's writing, painting, cooking, or making music, feeds parts of you that cannot be reached by logic or routine alone. Play, too, has its place. It could be as simple as laughing with friends, exploring a new hobby, or being curious without an agenda. These moments remind you that life is not only about surviving, but about enjoying. Consistency is what turns these practices into true nourishment rather than occasional indulgences. Just as your body needs daily food, your inner self needs daily care. You do not wait until you are starving to eat, and you should not wait until you are emotionally starving to give yourself what you need. Even small daily actions, 5 minutes of meditation, a short walk, writing down 3 things you are grateful for, can accumulate into a deep reservoir of inner strength over time. When you make inner nourishment a priority, you change the way you relate to the world. You stop chasing people to make you feel better because you already feel full inside. You stop grasping at achievements to prove your worth because you already know it. You interact with others not from a place of need, but from a place of overflow, sharing joy instead of extracting it. This shift transforms not only how you feel about yourself, but how people experience you. They sense your steadiness, your wholeness, and they are drawn to it. Inner nourishment is an act of self-respect. It is saying to yourself, I am worth the time and effort it takes to care for me. It is not selfish. It is the foundation that allows you to give to others without resentment, to face challenges without collapsing, and to live a life that feels rich from the inside out. When you learn to feed your own soul, you are no longer at the mercy of who feeds you. And in that independence, you discover a freedom that is both rare and unshakable. Living as your own source of happiness means stepping into a place where your emotional climate is no longer dictated by who approves of you, who notices you, or whether the world bends to your preferences. It is the state of being where joy arises naturally from within, independent of external conditions. This does not mean you are immune to pain or disappointment, but that your sense of well-being is not built on fragile foundations. You may still appreciate love, friendship, success, and recognition, but you no longer treat them as the oxygen you need to breathe. They are blessings, not necessities. The mistake many people make is believing happiness is something to be obtained, a prize to be won after meeting certain conditions. They think, I'll be happy when I get the job, find the right partner, move to a better city, have more money. But this approach keeps happiness forever on the horizon, always dependent on the next achievement, the next possession, the next person's affection. We are often taught, implicitly or explicitly, that our happiness depends on how others treat us. While human connection is deeply important, relying on others to maintain your emotional state makes you vulnerable to constant instability. People are unpredictable, their moods, attention, and actions will fluctuate. If your happiness depends on their consistency, you will live in constant emotional turbulence. But when you become your own source, you can enjoy people's kindness without fearing its absence. Living this way also means finding purpose and meaning in your own actions rather than in how they are perceived. When you do something creative, kind, or courageous, and you feel proud of yourself without needing applause, you are standing in self-sourced happiness. You are not performing for approval. You are expressing your own values and joy. This makes your life much more resilient because you no longer abandon your path just because it is not widely recognized. Another important aspect is emotional self-care. When difficulties arise, people often reach outward, seeking comfort, distraction, or validation from others. There is nothing wrong with asking for support, but if it is your only coping mechanism, you remain dependent. Living as your own source means learning to soothe and center yourself through challenges. This could mean sitting quietly with your emotions rather than rushing to escape them, practicing calming techniques, or reflecting in a way that helps you understand and release what you're feeling. You become your own anchor. It's worth noting that this way of living is not about isolation. You can still share your life, love deeply, and accept help when needed. The difference is you approach relationships from fullness rather than emptiness. You do not enter them as a beggar looking for scraps of happiness, but as someone who already carries joy within, wanting to share it. This makes your connections healthier, less burdened by unspoken demands. You give because you want to, not because you fear being left empty if you don't receive in return. The practice of living as your own source is built through small, daily choices. You choose to start the day with something that nourishes you, whether it's movement, stillness, or creativity. You choose to focus on what is within your influence, rather than obsessing over what is not. You choose to speak to yourself kindly, to find beauty in the ordinary, to celebrate your own progress without waiting for someone else's approval. Each of these choices reinforces the truth that your happiness does not live in someone else's hands. This way of living transforms your experience of life. You stop chasing fleeting highs and start cultivating a steady sense of peace. You become less reactive to the ups and downs of the world because you know the core of your joy cannot be touched by circumstances. You stop needing constant reassurance because you trust yourself to maintain your own emotional well-being. This inner stability radiates outward. People sense it, and it often inspires them to seek the same for themselves. The greatest gift of living as your own source of happiness is the freedom it brings. You are no longer bargaining with life saying, "I'll be okay if you are okay," period. You do not have to wait for permission to enjoy the present moment. You can meet life as it is, fully and openly, because you are no longer dependent on it being a certain way for you to feel whole. And in that freedom, you discover a deeper joy than any external condition could provide, a joy that belongs entirely to you and that no one can take away. This journey of learning to feel good without depending on anyone is not about pushing people away or pretending you need nothing. It is about discovering that the wellspring you've been searching for in others has been within you all along. The compliments, the attention, the recognition, they are sweet, but they are not the source. The source is your own awareness, your own acceptance, your own ability to meet life as it is and still find beauty in it. When you live this way, the world stops holding your happiness hostage. You can enjoy love without clinging to it, face loss without being destroyed by it, and walk through uncertainty without fear eating you alive. You stop being a prisoner of other people's moods and opinions. You become whole, so that when you give freely. When you receive with gratitude, not desperation. And perhaps the most liberating truth of all is this: you do not have to wait for anything to change in order to feel good right now. Not the job, not the partner, not the money, not the praise. You can choose in this moment to return to yourself, to nourish yourself, to draw joy from your own being. When you do, you carry a quiet power that no one can grant you and no one can take away. That is the kind of freedom that makes life worth living. The truth is, there will always be something missing if you believe happiness comes from outside. And even when you get the thing you were chasing, the satisfaction is temporary. Soon, the mind shifts its focus to what's next, and the cycle continues. Becoming your own source of happiness begins with the radical acceptance that you already have within you the capacity to feel joy, peace, and fulfillment right here, right now. This is not just a comforting idea, it is a practical skill. It involves training yourself to notice and appreciate what is present rather than constantly measuring life against an imagined ideal. Gratitude plays a large role here. When you can look around at the simple things, a quiet morning, a breath of fresh air, a meal you enjoy, and feel contentment, you are tapping into happiness that is self-generated. This shift also requires dismantling the belief that other people are responsible for making you feel good.